Hello, welcome everyone to another Mental Health Monday here on Even Tacos Fall Apart. I'm really excited tonight. We are going to be talking about unleashing your bad-assery, and we have a great guest joining us tonight. This is Sheri. Sheri, thank you so much for joining us today, just taking the time out of your evening and being here with us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited to be part of this.
Yeah. So y'all know the drill. If you are here and you are live and you want to ask some questions, feel free to pop those into the chat and we will make sure to get them answered while we are here in live. I'm actually just going to do a quick test because I don't see things popping up on my screen like they should. Oh no, there it goes. Okay, great. It looks like it's working. So we should be good.
I
If
love
you
this.
I know. Listen, sometimes technology, we were just talking about technology not liking me, and it was looking like it wasn't, so it happens. If y'all have any questions for Sheri tonight, feel free to pop them into the chat, and we will make sure to answer them while we are here in live. But let me tell you guys a little bit about Sheri right now. So she is the author of Unzipped and Blindsided, two books rooted in her own experience with major change, tough lessons, and real growth. She's also created Master of Bad-Assery, or MOBA, an apparel and community brand built around the idea that anyone can push through obstacles and work towards their strongest self. Sheri has spent years sharing her story to help others find their voice and feel confident using it. So I'm really excited to talk with her today about what it really means to unleash your own bad-assery. And if you guys would like to find Sheri, I have a couple of links here for you: website, LinkedIn, Threads, Instagram, TikTok, all of those. Feel free to click through and connect with her wherever you would like to connect with her. And again, Sheri, thank you so much for being here. I'm looking forward to our conversation tonight.
No, me too. And that was a heck of an intro. So, Ellie, I just want to make sure I can live up to the expectation now. Let's go.
Hell yeah. So what inspired you to start sharing your story in such a public way?
I was somebody who was always a writer at heart. Like, like from a young age, I was one who would write little poems or little stories, and I would get lost in things like that. And when before we had social media and before real blogging, we kind of had like MySpace, and then like we kind of had like little basic blog sites, and I would just
Mm-hmm.
kind of blog a little bit here and there. But when I decided to have bariatric surgery back in 2014, nobody was having it back then. It wasn't a very
Yeah.
common surgery, so I found my old blogs. I think it was like WordPress or something like that. And I just started documenting my journey. Like, every couple of days I was just, because I wanted to be able to go back in time and kind of reflect on how far I'd come, in the hopes that it was actually going to do its job and that the weight was going to come off. But I wanted to remember it, and I wanted to document it also in the hopes that maybe one day it can help somebody else, you know, not have to go through it alone like I did.
I love that. And that's something that, first of all, I remember the MySpace and Zanga, and there are several of those kinds
Yes.
of, yeah, several of
Yeah.
those kinds of sites. Those were very interesting, interesting days. But then the WordPress stuff came along too, and it was
Mhm.
really neat to be able to go and find people and exactly what you're saying, being like, oh, I'm gonna go through this. I know I'm gonna go through this, especially if you have a heads up, and you can go and try and find something and see like, okay, what was it like? I know whenever I had
Right.
surgery on both of my hands at the same time, I did a lot of reading other people's stories to see like, what is it like to have surgery on both of your hands at one time? And is it like, what's the recovery like? What are the suggestions after that? And so I
Right.
actually picked up a lot of tips and stuff from people that I never would have thought of to
Mhm.
even consider, like, install a bidet in your house. Obviously, like, now that to me is like, oh yeah, duh, that sounds like a great idea.
I wish there. It's so funny. So I can't imagine what it would be like to have both hands have surgery. What is the biggest surprise and something like that you don't think about?
You can't open doors.
Okay, I
You
okay, I
cannot
would
you
have ever
cannot
thought
open a
about
door.
that.
Yep. So whenever you're recovering, it's like you don't close any doors and you don't open any doors, because otherwise you're trying to like use your elbows to,
Yeah.
because it hurts to use your hands. And yeah, that was probably the biggest one for me, was like, oh, I can't close my bedroom door at night. Okay, fine, no big deal. But then if the kids close the door and I have to, yeah. So it was very much that was probably my biggest surprise. The
Isn't
other
it
stuff
funny?
I
Like
had prepared for, like everything else I had prepared for. So
I get that. I feel like it's sometimes it's the things that we take for granted that we don't think about.
Yes.
Like I would automatically assume going to the restroom, like certain like big things, like not being able to do, like something like just opening a door, or like what if the wind just like there's a cross breeze in your house and it slams the door and then you
Yep.
get okay.
Yeah, that was the biggest one because I remember the very first time I went home and I had my sister, my dad came and supported me. My oldest was not as old as he is now, but he was old enough to be helpful. And my youngest was not so young that he was helpless. So it was like
Right.
I had a lot of support around me. But I remember coming home and I knew I couldn't drive and all this stuff. And like all that was really obvious to me. But then I got to the front door and I was like, I reached for the doorknob and I was like, oh, I don't have the strength in my hands right now. Like I can barely feel my hands right now. And so my
Wow.
sister was like, step back. But then even doors inside, it's like, oh, I have to go to the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
Well, someone has to open the door for me.
See, that's freaking crazy. I would have never
Yeah.
thought about that.
Yeah. But it's great to be able to go and you find information on
Mm-hmm.
what has this experience been for other people and what can I pick up ahead of time and kind of do that. So I love hearing that you were doing it not only for yourself but for other people as well, because I think that has a potentially huge impact. Even now, you said you had that in 2014, so more than 10 years ago. So I'm sure even now people are finding your story that way.
Yeah, and I know that people have reached out to me since then, that they've gone back to the very beginning of those blogs and read them. And
I love
it's just
that.
like, in something like in your case too, it's such an uncommon situation to be in.
Mm-hmm.
And 10, 11 years ago, bariatric surgery, it wasn't common. It wasn't as
Yeah.
mainstream as it is now, like with GLP-1s and stuff. It was last resort options for people. There wasn't books on it. There wasn't TV shows about. You had a couple celebrities that had kind of talked about it a little
Yes.
bit, but then that was it. Like there was nothing to compare it to or ask for guidance. So I was like, I struggled a lot in the beginning. So it
Yeah.
was my way of saying I don't want anyone to struggle the way that I had. I had no intentions of writing a book at the time, but I was like, even if you just read my blog and followed my journey, just to know that you're not alone in this
Mm-hmm.
like little piece or something like that. That was my inspiration or my motivation to just write out the good, the bad, and the ugly at the time.
Yeah. What got you into the writing part of it? Like into the book writing part? What was the catalyst there?
It, it was one of the, I never had a desire or I never had a dream necessarily to put it into an actual book. But when I started joining years later, it was like 5 some odd years later, Facebook started coming out with some of the support groups, like bariatric support groups and stuff. And I would join those. But by now I was like a vet. I was OG because I was like 4 or 5 years out. And people would ask me questions and I would talk to them. And, you know, people would say like, you helped ease my mind so much, or that I would get such positive feedback from it. And I would tell my husband, I was like, oh my God, like this person, just her attitude changed, like I helped someone. And he's like, you should write a book. And I was like, I should. And then nothing ever happens, and
Yeah.
then like 6 months go by and then you help somebody else and you tell him like, yeah, I really should write a book. And he's like, yeah, you should. And then nothing happens. And then finally, it was 2019. I'll never forget. It was June 2019. I had a really heart to heart with some person some stranger off the internet, and she said that I helped her immensely. And I came home and I told my husband. I was like, man, like I really should write a book about this. And he this time he was more kind of like irritated, going, "How about you do something about it and stop talking about it?"
Yeah.
And he was kind of a jerk about, I don't know what the language is here. He was kind of a jerk about
It's
it.
fine. You're
And,
fine.
and so I got snarky and I said, fine, I will. And I stormed into the office and I sat at the computer and it was a white screen. And you're like, I've never written a book before. Like,
Uh-huh.
I didn't think this through. But now it was just pure stubbornness because he just irritated the crap out of me. And I went back to my old blogs and I kind of went back to the beginning and I started printing out stuff. And I stared at the screen for like 45 minutes and it was just a blank screen. Because how do you write a book? How
Yeah.
much do you put in there? Like, yes, it's our life. We live through it, but how embarrassing do we get? How vulnerable do you get? Strangers off the internet are going to read this and judge you. Like, how much do you want to be and like all of these thoughts just like go through your head. And then finally, I was feeling defeated, but a single idea came into my head and it was just the very first sentence. And that was it. And I typed out the first sentence And then all of a sudden, like my fingers just kept moving. And before I knew it, there was a whole page. And before I knew it, there's an entire chapter. And before I knew it, the sun had gone down. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and you're just still typing and typing. And the next morning, like I would wake up and I would type before work, and I would type on my lunch break, and I would type while on the clock. I'm not in, this is a long time ago. I don't work for that job anymore. But I literally wrote, and for 5 days straight, I just wrote nonstop. And then the whole first draft was done on day 5. And I had wrist guards around. I had like ace bandages around my wrist. They were hurting so bad, but I just took it as a sign. It was time to come out. And I knew that there was work to be done with it. Like it wasn't like a final draft, but it was all because, to be honest, he pissed me off and I got really stubborn by it. And I decided to write a book to shut him up.
Yeah. I mean, listen, doing stuff out of spite is great.
Absolutely. If it's positive, when you do positive results.
Yes.
Then I'm all for it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have a true crime story that fascinates you?
Okay, so you had sent that to me. I don't know if I have a specific story, but I am fascinated by serial killers in general.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember watching like the Bundy tapes.
Yeah.
And there's something that's very fascinating about the mindset of a serial killer, and what is the point that you finally just flip the switch and your entire mindset just changes in and it's not the single moment, it's the single moment, the catalyst of all, like many years leading up to that. But what was like fascinating about Ted Bundy was when you watch those trials, he murdered numerous people, and yet women were throwing themselves.
Yes.
He was so handsome. They were fighting in the courtrooms, and I'm like, you do know what's on his resume, right? Like this is that element of it that we're just willing to cast that aside because of how magnetic his personality was. Whatever it was that he just drew people in. That sociopathic. I know that I'm not one, but I'm fascinated by how people can exist like that.
Yeah, and it's very like if you could throw yourself at anyone, why pick this guy? Like throw yourself at a movie star or something. But I think a big part of it is it's in your own mind, right? Of what do you deserve and that kind of thing too. So it's interesting to go through and see why serial killers did what they did. And we watch true crime stuff in this house all the time, all the documentaries, all the things. It's to the point where the other day I was walking out like just through the living room, and my oldest was home from college and he was watching something, and I go, "Oh, which one is this?" And he was like, "Wait, I don't remember. I watched too many in a row." He's like, "Which one am I on? Hold on."
I love watching them. There's the new one that just came out about Ed Gein. Mm-hmm. I started watching it, but it's Charlie Hunnam is playing Ed Gein. Yeah. And Charlie Hunnam is one of my husbands. He just doesn't know he's my husband. So on a personal level, it's really hard to see him.
Yes. Yeah.
In this role and unsee Jax Teller, but it's next on my list is to watch that one. I heard it's incredible.
Yeah. I haven't watched that one either, so I'll probably get to it eventually, but it hasn't come up. We're in the middle of watching The Ultimatum right now, so that's our current. That one is not true crime. It is reality drama TV. Okay. So it's good. We're a very mixed house in what we watch.
I think that's good. I think there should be diversity in your television viewing.
Yeah. I mean, there has to be, right? Especially if you're going to watch true crime stuff. You got to have something lighter.
You need something light to balance it out 100%.
Yep. Yeah. So we're here today to talk about unleashing your bad-assery. So how do you define bad-assery in everyday life?
So the thing with MOBA is that it's going to mean something different to everybody else. But I think what's fair to say is like all encompassing is defining badassry in your everyday life. It's just the attitude that you take every single day. I think the idea of badassery is your attitude. It's about owning the day. It's about how you go into your job or how you go into whatever relationships you are communicating with that day, how you're treating others. I think that when you walk in and whatever task you have, doing it with gusto, doing it with purpose, doing it with like this sense of accomplishment, I think that is in some cases, it's a very small day-to-day thing, depending on where you are in your life, or in other people, it might be climbing these mountains or doing these like crazy things. It's just like whatever you are working on in that day, you're just doing it with, I don't know, like above what your perception of average is, beasting it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad that you kind of said just whatever your version of that is, right? Because I'm definitely have things that I'm a badass in. I'm not gonna go climb a mountain. That's not
Right.
it's not one of my areas.
Out of a plane, not
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah. And if I did, I would be the worst mountain climber ever, especially starting off. But it would be me being a badass mountain climber for what I could do. Like my level, that would be me taking that on. So,
but there might be something that you're passionate about that you can do something and excel at it, whereas other people might, like you and I are not going to excel in the techie stuff. We've already determined we are not tech. That is not our strong suit. But if there's something that you're in, like, and like, it's not just about beasting something in a physical sense, climbing a mountain or doing something in the gym. You are a MOBA if you're dealing with cancer, if you're overcoming cancer. You are a MOBA if you are a teacher who's struggling to, you're dealing with the politics in a school setting or something like that, and going above, or it's about thinking outside the box. It's about being told you can't do something and you're like, no, not today. We are going to prove you wrong. It's all about your attitude in whatever aspect needs improvement or whatever goal you have.
I love that. And you've said MOBA a couple times, so just let people know what that stands for.
I just thought everybody knew what it was at this point. No, so MOBA stands for Master of Bad-Assery. It was a term that I used to say joking around as a throwaway line when I was BSing my way through college and writing a paper on a book that I was supposed to have read and I didn't. And I would get an A on the paper because one of my skill sets is not techiness, but is BSing my way through college papers. That was one of my skill sets. And I would say, like, I was a master of Bad-Assery, or if I somehow unclogged a garbage disposal, which is not my forte, I was a master of Bad-Assery that day because I was a handyman. It was just like these little terms that I used to say like randomly.
That's great.
That just kind of stuck.
Yeah, I love that. I just wanted to make sure folks watching and listening had a chance to know what that stands for. I just was editing one of the podcast episodes I did on working with kids with special needs, and it was one of those things that it was like, as I was listening back to it, it was like IEP and SRI and like all these different things. And I'm like, oh my God, we didn't define any of those. So I had to go back and like put it in the intro and be like, by the way, here's what all these things stand for. So
because like when you're talking, like it's just so natural. And
yes.
like, I actually know what an IEP is because my best friend is a special ed teacher.
See?
So when you said that, I'm like, oh, I know what she's talking.
Yeah, and it's a real term.
It is a real term.
So what mindset or multiple mindsets held you back before you started your journey, and how did you decide to take those on, or how did you challenge them?
I think that the biggest challenges that I had my whole life had to do with my weight. And it never had anything to do with not thinking I can do something, because in my head, I could do that cartwheel, I can lift that thing or whatever, but physically your body's like, no, like you really can't. I was always stubborn in that sense, but I think there was a moment where I don't know about you if you've ever had weight issues. Anybody who's ever had weight issues and grew up in the 80s and 90s, you had like Jane Fonda, and then you had South Beach diets, and you had like every fad under the sun, and you would be gung-ho for the first month, and then nothing would happen, and then you lose 10 and you gain 20, and then you lose 10 and you gain 20, and it was like this vicious cycle. And so when I decided to, before I even thought about having bariatric surgery, I had found myself at 350 pounds, and I ended up having a doctor's appointment where they took blood. And this was up until that point, I was only like 32 at the time. You're still invincible. Your blood's always normal. And so even though you're like overweight, but this time I had a fatty liver, I had high cholesterol, I had borderline type 2 diabetes, and that was enough of a scare for me to want to do something about it. And the doctor at the time wanted to give me like 5 or 6 different medications. And I personally didn't want to rely on medication the rest of my life. And I would ask them, what if I did this, this, and this? If I started walking, I put the fork down, I go for a walk. What if I do all these things? And her attitude was just very dismissive. And it was just like, well, if you lost all the weight, you're still going to have diabetes forever. And just kind of like how my husband irritated me years later,
Yes.
like that was just enough for me to just no, like that just pissed me off. I'm going to prove you wrong. And that was the moment that my journey changed, because it was no longer trying to lose weight at that point. It was to prove a B wrong. That's what how I had it in my head.
Yes.
And so for 6 months, like in the first month, you lose the 20 pounds that we all lose, and the water weight and the inflammation. But after that, nothing would come off. But now it was
Yeah.
about saving my life and proving somebody wrong. So for 6 months, I cut everything out. I went walking every single day. I ate very clean. I tracked my food. I increased my water. And 6 months later, I got retested, and the diabetes was gone, and the fatty liver was gone, and the cholesterol was normal. And the doctor had said, see, this is why you have to take the medication. And I was like, I didn't even fill the prescription. And I was smug as shit. And I own that.
Yeah.
And that was the moment that my entire mindset shifted, was because it was no longer about trying to overcome obesity, but it wasn't fixated on the number on a scale. It was literally healing myself from the inside out. And I realized that stubbornness can make you conquer a lot of things that you didn't think possible.
Yes, yes. You can be very stubborn. You can be very stubborn and get a lot of shit done, for sure.
Yeah, you can irritate a lot of people too, but hey, you get a lot of stuff done.
Yeah. So did you change doctors after that? I mean, I feel like I would have changed doctors after that first part, but
I think it's just, I mean, I can go off on an entire tangent on doctors not listening, and how we have to be our own biggest advocate to be heard. Yeah. But there's been a couple times in my life where a doctor has basically said, if you don't do X, Y, and Z, this is what's going to happen. And I said, okay, nay, let me prove you wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's not an uncommon experience, unfortunately, because doctors are like, whoa, I went to school for this many years. Did you go to school for this many years? And it's like, I've lived in this body for this many years. Have you lived in this body for this many years? Like, come on now. But it's like, you have to listen. You want to listen to the doctor. That's what they're there for. That's why you're there. You chose to go there to that doctor. But yeah, sometimes you really have to advocate for yourself. And that goes for both mental and physical health. We talk about 100%. That all the time.
Yeah, especially when it comes to mental health, like you have to advocate for yourself, because no one else is going to do it for you.
Yeah.
And what's frustrating is, I understand you went to school for 8 years, 10 years, 12 years, or whatever, and you have a degree. It's still called a practice for a reason.
Yeah.
I am not discrediting the medical industry, but what I'm saying is, you cannot have me sit in a room that you just met me for 5 minutes and do an entire assessment on what is best for me and my body if you don't know everything. We have to be able to be taught to know our own bodies, to know when something's off, to have them look at it. And I think a lot of us look at doctors or look at medical professionals as being in a godly state, that if another doctor had told you or told somebody else, you're going to have diabetes for the rest of your life unless you do this, you're going to scare people into thinking that's true. And you're going to create this limited mindset on somebody that's going to make them think, well, I'll never get better because they said I'll never get better. And I don't think that that's right. I think that we should be not condemned to ask why do I need to do this?
No, I appreciate that, most definitely. Hi Angela, welcome to the stream tonight. If you have any questions for us, feel free to just pop those in the chat. We'll make sure to answer them while we're here and live. So what was there I mean, you talked about the moment that you were like, I'm going to do this out of spite. Was there a moment where you shifted from really that I'm going to do this to save my life to I'm going to do this to really start getting stronger and really start rebuilding myself?
I think there was a couple moments. I know that when I had the surgery, I honestly didn't think it was going to work, because I spent my whole life doing everything and being disappointed. That was the first time that I kind of shifted my mindset. And I actually still have one now. I made a vision board. I was a big fan of The Secret and manifesting what you wanted. So I created what I called an NSV vision board. And so those who've had any kind of weight loss or bariatric community, NSV is a non-scale victory. So it's something like crossing your legs or wrapping a towel around your waist. And I just made this vision board of all of these different things, getting on a horse, doing a mud run, like things that were just so far out of reach or not that terrible. And those were the things I started visualizing every single day before and after surgery. And after surgery, when you're living off this little 1 ounce sippy cup and there's nothing but food on TV and commercials, I would stop and I would focus on the bigger picture, like why I did this. And I didn't want it was no longer about surviving this little 1 ounce cup. It was about being hopeful for what's beyond this cup. And so the more that I was kind of fixating on the bigger picture, the more that I was able to kind of talk myself out of the, like, your personal demons or whatever in the moment. So I would say that that was one of the first times
Yeah.
that it shifted.
You talked about doctors, like they call it a practice. How do you help folks understand that Bad-Assery is also a practice and that it's not a finish line?
So I think that I always say that being a MOBA or your mindset, like you said, it's not about being at the destination, it's about the journey to get there. Because there is no such thing as perfection. We all have our own different variation of what we think or perception of what we think perfection is, but there is no definitive, identity of perfection. So you're never going to be there. You're never going to be at a specific destination. Yes, you might have a specific goal on the scale. Like, I want to lose X amount of weight on a scale. But what we even in that case, I thought my goal was a certain number. And then years later, I had regain, which is very common after weight loss surgery. I had over 50 pounds of regain. And then as I was losing weight, I was 15 pounds higher than where I used to be, but I looked better. So all of a sudden, I looked better, 15 pounds heavier than I did. And it was because my body shifted. So then your goals are always going to be changing. We're always going to be adapting. So what we want to do, and there's no guarantee we're going to get to the set destination that we wanted. We're always going to be derailed at times. We're always going to be blindsided at times. We're always going to, I tell people the pandemic has taught us all the same thing, is it didn't matter how much money we had. It didn't matter what our educational background was or how well off we were. We were all screwed equally, like knocked off our butts. And we had to learn to adapt and find a way out of it. And so the whole part of being a badass is learning how to, number one, enjoy the destination and not get as frustrated with it. And number two, learn to always make yourself adaptable, because it's going to change. It's guaranteed. At some point during the way, it's going to change.
Yeah. It definitely is. It's easy to say, like, I want things to be perfect. It's
Right.
really hard to define that, though. And that's something that I've struggled with. I am definitely a perfectionist when it comes to some things. It's something that I've had to really work on, to be like, okay, hold on. Not everything is going to look perfect. And even once if I define perfect today and I achieve that perfect tomorrow, it's no longer the perfect. Like, it's just constantly moving. So,
right.
But it's really hard to wrap your mind around that sometimes.
Well, and I think sometimes too, we get defeated because we make these goals, but we don't make them specific enough. Like, if you say that your goal is to be happy, well, what does that mean? Because your perception of happy is going to be different from mine. Is your happy have to do with a financial number in the bank? Does it have to do with a certain kind of partner that you are dating? Does it have to do with having a family? Does it have to do with traveling? Like, what is? I think that's oftentimes, like, the more specific we are, the more easier it is to attain those quote unquote goals or whatever, as long as, along that way, we're still adapting and we're still preparing for change and stuff. But if you can't be specific, then you're literally just going to be running around searching for something your whole life, not knowing whether you ever had it or not.
Yeah. Yeah. We've talked about kind of the Bad-Assery, and you've talked about your weight loss journey. What does that look like for someone who struggles with something like anxiety or chronic pain?
I think if you were to kind of apply like a badass mindset around that, it's having a mindset that you are not. I would say that you're not defined solely by your diagnosis. Like, my mom was a hypnotherapist. My mom, I don't want to say was, because she is still alive, but she's a hypnotherapist. And she used to talk about disease as a dis-ease. Like, there's a lot of times that these dis-eases, now not everything might have a cure a definitive cure for it, but there's things that we can do to make it better. And I think that one thing that separates people who deal with any kind of chronic pain or anxiety or mental illness or any kind of physical ailments too is I think that we get caught up in the definition of what it is, like, being defined by this. I suffer from anxiety, and every day it's part of your everyday vocabulary. Oh yeah, I was diagnosed with this and this. And I feel that we use that to limit ourselves. Do I think that a lot of these things can be limiting? Absolutely, but I think that when we start limiting ourselves because of a title, I think that we're doing ourselves a disservice. I think there's always something that we can do to either help our mental space regarding a certain ailment that we have, or finding the right doctor who will listen to you, finding the right method or a plan of action to help combat it, and just not accepting it as a permanent sentence for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Finding the right providers who will actually listen is it really is, like, people say, oh, this made such a big difference, but it really is life changing once you find the right person to be in your corner, because that's what they're working for you, and they're there to be in your corner. And if that's not what they're doing, then there's someone out there who will.
Yeah.
There's another provider who will.
There's so many doctors out there.
Yeah. So you went through a huge transformation. What helped you stay grounded through the changes in your body, and then also any changes in your identity?
I think one of the things that always helped me somewhat stay grounded is knowing I will never forget where I came from. And I will never forget the struggle that I had. And it does make me I appreciate a lot of the small things. Like, I'm a very humbled person. And also, I also notice like to fall backwards. I notice like to feel on top of the mountain and then to be knocked off the mountain and then have to strive to get back to the mountain. So I think that fear of falling backwards again helps you stay grounded and not, get overly cocky with where you are. Because like I said, at any point, the rug can get pulled out from underneath us and knock us on our asses. And then I also think you need to find a good support team. You need to find your people, whether it's one or two, whether it's five or six. Like, at the time, my husband was the first one to say, like, hey, you better knock that crap off. Or like, he had no problem. If I was, I don't want to say being out of place, that's the wrong word to use, but if I was saying something that was unrealistic, or if I was acting a certain way that was outside of my character, having somebody be like, hey, this is outside of your norm. What's going on? Like, what is causing this? I think is a huge way to stay grounded. I think a lot of relationships are so afraid of hurting our feelings and not being honest with us, that I think that when you can find a circle that can be brutally honest without being a jerk about it, but be upfront.
Yeah. Or if your relationship is, be a little bit of a dick about it and and say it super bluntly. Like, I've got a couple of friends who that would work with. I've got a couple of friends who they would probably never speak to me again. So,
right. And I'm getting
know.
a lot of. He was a jerk about. I mean, like, he wasn't a jerk about it. He was very blunt. He has zero filter, and he's very blunt. But I also knew that when he gave a compliment, it was genuine, and he wasn't blowing smoke up your butt. Because when he didn't like something, he had no problem telling you that he didn't like it. So I prefer that level of honesty, because I'm no longer questioning or ever second guessing things that are being said.
Yeah. Is there anything you wish more people understood about the emotional side of a major physical change?
I think the biggest thing that people need to understand in general, and not even if it's just a physical change, just in general, there is a reason that we are the way that we are. There's a reason that we come off as passive aggressive. There's a reason we come off as insecure. There's a reason we come off as narcissistic. There's a reason that we come off as, having no filter or anything like that. And like, I think that especially when it comes to physical changes, I deal with a lot in the weight loss community, like over the last few years. And in the weight loss community, there's a lot of underlining patterns, as to why we turn to food. And a lot of it's trauma, a lot of it's emotional neglect or any. And so once we can understand that this was not just we didn't just like raise our hand in class and say, when I grow up, I want to be 350 pounds and I want people to stare at me with disgust and I want men to not open doors for me. And like, this is the life that no, this is not something that we chose. Was a disease, just like anything else. It was an epidemic of obesity, but people have to understand the emotional component as to why we were that way. And I think that once you can understand that, and understand that you're not going to fix it overnight. A weight loss surgery, a medication, and even if you have any kind of a chronic pain, just taking a magic pill is not going to fix the problem overnight. And the best example I can give is like I'm originally from California. And so a lot of us, we had concrete in the backyard, but you move to Oklahoma and there's lawns and you have to mow the lawn. And I don't know how to mow the lawn. So you hire someone to come and mow the lawn, and he comes every couple of weeks and it's just the surface. And every couple of weeks he comes and he just cuts the surface. But these weeds are like deep rooted and they just grow. And some days it rains in the middle of July and it grows even more like wildfire. But every 2 weeks we just kind of blanket it. And how much money are we spending every 2 weeks to have somebody come and just mow it? Whereas if you took one day and just got on your hands and knees and you pulled out every weed from the ground up, and it might have taken you 8 hours, but it's going to take you months and months before you have to deal with that backyard again. And I think so many times we're just always looking for the quick fix, or always looking for just a quick mow lawn, or just to have somebody give us a magic pill or a special pep talk or something like that. But most of us don't know how to pick the roots out. Most of us don't know how to do that. So I think that when you're dealing with anybody who has any kind of a physical change, those roots are deep emotionally, and sometimes they don't even realize, as ourselves, we don't even realize how deep they go to.
Yeah. Or you might not even realize that there is an emotional root to an action.
Right.
Like that's some shit that people take years to work out in therapy sometimes. Mm-hmm. So
facts.
And I would say just don't like feel bad if you suddenly realize, oh, there's an emotional reason behind this, and I never knew this. I've been dealing with it for X number of years. And I never realized that's what this was about. It's fine. It's fine. You're realizing it now, and now you move forward with a different understanding. So that can be really, really jarring to realize. Mm-hmm. Also.
Yeah, we don't want to deal with our emotions.
No, let's not do that.
Who wants feelings?
Don't need them. No. Only the good ones. Just give me the good ones, right?
Right.
None of that
good stuff. Yeah. Sunshine and rainbows.
Yes. What do you do on the days where your own badassery feels hard to access?
I used to be very heavily an all or nothing person. So when I spiral hard. When I'm on my mental high, I guess you can say, like an emotional high of the day, then and I was on my game. I've learned now there's like this term that floats around, like it's okay to not be okay. I feel like it's overused a lot now, and I do believe, yes, it's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to stay there for a long time. It's not okay to live there. So one of the things that I am learning to do for myself is I acknowledge in the moment I'm having an off day, and sometimes I'll write it down, or I'll sit and talk to myself why it's happening. Is it that something had happened at work? Was it something that set me off? Was it a conversation that I had? Is it even about that person, or is it my projecting something? Because I just kind of sit and I just kind of deal with myself. And sometimes I just acknowledge today's going to be one of those days. It's not going to be a good day. It's not going to be my best day. But I don't want to live there. If I still get up, I still take a shower, I still put a face on. Those are the basic things for me, for my personal mental health. And if that's all that I did for that day, then so be it. But tomorrow is a clean slate. We're not bringing today into tomorrow. We have to wake up with a clean slate. And if we only barely do a little bit more than yesterday, I'd rather do 1% more than yesterday than to do, 30% less than I did.
Yeah. That's something that I'm working with my youngest. My youngest is 12, and he's entering a stage of life where his attitudes about things are changing, and he doesn't really understand why. But we had, just a couple of weeks ago, we had a really deep conversation about listen, you're reacting in this different way. I'm getting used to you reacting in this different way. You're getting used to you reacting in this different way. We need to identify what's going on, and we need to talk about it when you're not dysregulated so that we can figure out what will help you. And so we had a follow-up conversation. We talked about a few things. And then just today after school, he got home and he was having just a shit day. And it was one of those, like, he's stomping around, he's banging stuff around. And I was like, okay, I got work to do. I can't deal with it right now. I'm just going to let him be out there. And he came in here and he goes, Mom, what? He goes, I'm emotionally dysregulated. Can I have a hug? I was like, holy shit.
I love this.
And so we hugged for a really long time, and I just kind of like held him on my lap, which I don't get to do very often because he's giant. And he's still a big cuddler, but he's not usually like actually on my lap. And so hugged him for a really long time, and he was still having not a great afternoon, but it got a little bit better for him. And I haven't put it to him as, hey, you can have it this way, but you don't have to live there. I think maybe we need to have that conversation next. That part of, just because you had a bad afternoon doesn't mean your afternoon has to keep being bad, or it doesn't mean your evening has to be bad, or it doesn't mean the next day. Like, maybe all of those things are bad, but the next day is a new day. And so I think I should have that as a next follow-up. But I was really proud of him today for being like, identify it and ask for what you need and see how it helps.
You know what? I'm a firm believer. Like, I don't have a degree in psychology or anything like that, but I think the biggest downfall in all relationships is just communication. We just don't know how to communicate.
100%.
You know, we don't know how to communicate our feelings. We don't know how to receive other people's feelings. Like, I don't know what goes on in your head. I'm only listening to the words you're saying, and I'm interpreting the words that you're saying the way that I interpret it because of my past and history.
Yes.
And I think that a lot, like my husband at the time and I, like, we were not good communicators. I held everything in. I was not one who liked to talk. He was one that would go from 0 to 100, like, very quickly. And we would go like he would get mad, and then I get mad because he's mad, and then he gets mad that I'm mad, and then you don't talk for 3 days, you know? And then going like this for years. And finally, I think we were together like 10 years or something like that. And he came home from work and he was in a piss. He was going from 0 to 100, and he snapped at me, and I said, no. I am not the reason that you had a bad day today. I don't know what happened. I was not part of it. You are not going to project that shit. I said, I'm not doing this shit anymore. So I was like, tell you what, you go cool off. And if you want to have a conversation later on, we'll have it. It was like the first time I found my voice, and I stood up, and he was just kind of like, all right. He just kind of like walked off. But I had never expressed to him that it bothered me when he would react that way. And then all of a sudden I knew it was working, because years later something happened, and he goes, Sheri, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm having feelings right now, and I'm really agitated, and I understand X, Y, and Z, but I need an hour. Can you give me? And I was like, yeah, who are you? And it was because you took the time to just try to help them feel heard or help them understand. Like, I wish that we can just learn to talk to each other.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't how, I won't speak for you. It wasn't how I was raised. That's not how I was raised. I was raised, we don't see emotions. We don't hear emotions. We don't want emotions. Like, none of it. And so now, yes, get under there, and we're not ever going to vacuum under there. Like, nothing. We're not going to touch it. It's going to stay. All of that. And now, like, to me, raising kids now, it's like baffling how that was such a common opinion, how that was such a common thing that we learned as kids and young adults and everything. But I hope that now kids these days give me a lot of hope. And I hope that they are being raised by people who are like, wow, that was dumb.
Right.
Because I feel like I see that more and more, especially with my oldest, who's now in college. He'll talk to his friends and like, he just tells them what's going on and why he's having a rough time or whatever, or why what someone else said bothered him. And he says it to that person, and it's like, okay, great.
Like they confront their issues.
I love it. It doesn't always go the way he wants it to go, but that communication part is huge.
Putting it out there and just confronting it is like
Yes.
huge.
Yeah, for sure. So we got a little bit off, and that's what I do here. It's fine. But so what's one practical habit or mindset shift that listeners can try if they feel stuck?
I guess it probably depends on like how big we're talking, but I know for me, having like there's like certain mantras that like I'll say to myself like over and over again. I can do hard things is one that I've said like a lot when I'm in that moment. It's like I can do hard things. I can do hard things. And I'll repeat it like over and over again. There's something about how like the subconscious brain just like absorbs it like the more that you say it. Or I'm just like I said, I write things out now. Like when I'm feeling it in a moment. I found that with myself oftentimes, and I don't know if you're the same way, you're used to holding everything in. You're not used to expressing your emotions. So you're used to suppressing until your body can't handle it anymore. So now I get more in the habit. I don't want to live with it anymore. I'd rather just get it out of my body. So sometimes I kind of made a rule for myself personally. I don't like to be emotional in my house. And I know that sounds weird, but like I don't like to, like if I'm in my personal mental spiral, if I'm having like a rough time, I will get in my car with my computer, and down about 5 minutes away there's a pond, and I will go and sit at the pond with my computer, and sometimes I'll cry and I'll write and I'll do whatever, and because I don't want that negative energy in my home. So that's something that I do.
No, I get that. Not wanting to have it in your house, for sure. That's totally understandable. There have been moments where if I'm super dysregulated, I'll walk outside and just like have a little stompy tantrum moment, and then come back in and be like, okay, I can move on. I'm okay now.
I think walking is great. Like just being out in nature and just getting it out of your system for sure.
Yep. What inspired you to build a community around the MOBA brand instead of keeping it super product focused or trying to sell something with your experience?
So what's crazy is that was a total fluke. Happening is it was originally just a t-shirt company. We just like had some t-shirts and some hats at the time, and I was doing the 75 hard challenge at one point. This is like a few years ago, and I think I had already done the 75 hard challenge. I wasn't really big on social media at the time. I was doing it for myself, and then I don't know if you know anything about 75 hard. Number one, it's effing hard as crap. Number two, there was like the original 75 hard, and then there's like 3 additional phases that are like 30-day challenges after that. So I was in the middle. I had already done like all three of the phases. There was one last phase that was happening. I'll never forget. It was January of 2023. And so by then I had kind of gotten onto TikTok a little bit, and I was on lives in the bariatric community, and I happened to be wearing a hat one day, and people loved the hats. And then all of a sudden overnight, we went from not making sales in months to making like 10, 15 orders in a week. And it just kind of started growing. So I just started sharing about me, and I was saying, hey, in January, I'm doing the final phase of 75 hard. This is what I've been working on all year and stuff. And this is like the culmination. And people wanted to start doing their own challenges. They couldn't do what I was doing because it was way too hard for a beginner. And then there was somebody had reached out to me and said, hey, there's a national plank challenge like in January of that year, like through the military or through the Marines or something like that. Like, hey, we should do that. And I was like, well, yeah, it'll count as part of one of my workouts. So we would go live, every morning, and we would do 3 like 30-second planks or something like that. And then we would do it every single day. And then all of a sudden, all these people would start joining at 9:00 in the morning, Central or whatever it was, and they would plank with us. And then then all of a sudden people would comment and be like, I can't do the mornings. Is there any way you can do the evenings? And we're like, yeah, why not? Let's just do. So we do like 5:00 Pacific time or something. And then all of a sudden, like you would have like these panels on TikTok. You have like lives and you have like all these boxes, and we would have full boxes of just people. And after that plank challenge was done, then in February, people were like, well, what's next? And I'm like, I don't know. I've never done this before. Wall sits, like we'll just do wall sits. So we did a 30-day challenge of wall sits, and then people just kept wanting more. And then it got to the point where like in July, we were doing a 1776 push-up challenge for America's birthday. So we did 1,776 push-ups in the month of July. And then every single month we were just getting creative with, we were doing push-ups. We did the 12 days of MOBA Miss one year, where we did like every day, we did different challenges and stuff. Just like the 12 days of Christmas. And by day 12, you're doing like 12 burpees and 11 inchworms. And it was just this, it became like this entire community of people who just, we had people who were in wheelchairs. We had people who were starting off on oxygen. We had people who were pre-bariatric surgery that were leaning on each other for inspiration and support, and just having this place to go to every day to do something together, something that they've never done before. And it just kind of, like I said, it was just like it just happened on accident that it just turned into this giant community. And so now we have a lot of people who, like, we're also on a Discord channel, and people have support, and they share recipes, and they do workouts together, they walk together, and they just support each other when they're having a bad day. And it's just been really cool to see like an entire group of people with like a like-minded mindset. But MOBA means something different to everybody. It's just a place to kind of get together and utilize your personal mindset and do stuff you've never done before.
I love that. It sounds like it came together super organically and just kind of grew out of what you were already doing. That's great.
I was literally going to hang it up. Like, my husband and I were going to hang it up there. I was like, we were hemorrhaging money, trying to build something. It's kind of hard to build a brand that no one's heard of before, in the middle of like soon after a pandemic and stuff. And I happened to go on a live and talked about Barrett, and I just happened to be wearing a hat, and then everything just kind of changed after that.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
So now that you've built this, how do you make sure that the community goes beyond just selling motivation and really into that safe space that focuses on helping people make those changes that they really need to make?
I encourage everyone to lead by example. Because when you're on any kind of a wellness or a personal growth journey, everyone's experience is going to be different, and everyone's goals are going to be different. So there's no pushing on one idea or one belief on it to anyone. It's like, especially in the weight loss community, it's like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you whether or not to drink straws, or whether or not to use water enhancers, or whether or not to, do this and that. It's about encouraging people to find what works for them. And then putting yourself out. Like, I think that you lead by example instead of just telling people what to do and to not preach. And it's made up of real people. Like, we're all genuine people. We all struggle. Not one person has their ish all together. And if you say that you do, you are full of it. Like, nobody has their stuff 100% together. So it's being open and saying, hey, like, I'm a shit show. I say I'm shit show chic. Excuse my language. Like, that's
you're good.
I
It's all
own
good.
the idea that, like, I am perfectly imperfect. I am a natural disaster. I'm like organized chaos, like that. But I am who I am. And we encourage people, be who you are, exactly who you are. But there's always room for improvement in some areas. And that's where we're here, to give you a space to not be judged and to be genuine to who you are. But you need some help with, like, you want a workout buddy, you want some help with tips, you just want to talk about your day and have somebody listen to you. Like, we got you.
That's great. So when you think back to writing Unzipped, what parts of your journey were the hardest to revisit for you?
I think for me, it was kind of reminiscing on how differently you're treated when you're overweight. I will never forget, but I think sometimes you forget about how much of a struggle it was, because people are a lot nicer to you when you're more aesthetically pleasing, as I would say, to people. And I would tell stories about going to a restaurant to meet my friends, and a man was holding a door open for I was from Los Angeles, so it was two blonde bombshells that were in front of me, and he looked all like, he was very excited to open the door for these ladies, and then saw me coming, but let himself in. Like, it was like things like that. Like, you're not, it's crazy to be 350 pounds, but you're not seen. Like, it kind of defies, actual physics, but, metaphorically, like, you're not seen. And what was hard for me was getting to a point, I lost half my weight. in 18 months. And all of a sudden people treat you different.
Mm-hmm.
People from your past come out of the woodwork or treat you different. All of a sudden those guys that turned you down in high school or junior high are now trying to, get your attention. You're like, I didn't change. I'm still the same person. It's just the number on the scale has changed. And that was probably the hardest part of it.
Yeah.
To go through again.
And you're writing it to share. I mean, you mentioned this at the beginning, but you're putting all of this out there and memorializing it essentially.
Mm-hmm.
I know whenever I've shared parts of my story, that's one of the things that's really difficult to decide. What do I put out there and what do I not put out there, because I don't feel like I either don't feel comfortable sharing some of the things that I've been through, or I don't think that that's necessary to understand my story. So it can be really difficult to decide what to put out there. Did you struggle with that?
I did. And like, I really struggled on like how much because like I said, we all have a why. And especially with obesity, it's not like a simple, like, oh, I just happen to really like pasta and I got to, no, there's reasons why we got there. And some of them are a lot more traumatic or vulnerable for other people. And so making the decision, like, how much do you put in there, and I wrestled back and forth, but I don't think I put absolutely everything in there, but I put everything in there genuinely that was pertinent or relevant to the weight loss part of my journey. In Blindsided, I got a little bit more vulnerable in other stories that was like not weight loss related. That was it wasn't that I was afraid to be vulnerable. People are going to judge me regardless. Anybody who's on social media, you can make a video tomorrow and you're getting like hate comments and you're like, well, you don't even know me. So back then I was very afraid on how people were going to perceive it. But I was like, regardless, it's real. Whether or not you enjoy my story or whether or not you resonate with my story, this was real. This is my story. And I can tell you that I've had far more people reach out that something resonated with them than didn't. Like, you're not going to resonate with every single chapter in my story, but something in there is going to resonate with you because we all have a lot of similar patterns, that we've all gone through that we can relate to. I just made the decision, if I'm going to write about it, I want to be brutally honest, because I want the truth. If I was about to have bariatric surgery and there was a book out there, I want to know the truth, And so I decided, for me, lay it out all on the line.
Yeah.
And see what happens.
Was it much different writing Blindsided?
I think I had a lot more confidence in writing Blindsided. I will say Blindsided is a lot more darker of a tone. Because I use a lot of, I use a lot of humor. I have a dark sense of humor. That's how we get through life. So I think that there was a lot more humor in Unzipped, just kind of like navigating through a new body and things that happen. Whereas Blindsided was a lot of negative things that had happened in life, but how we all get blindsided and how we overcome that and how we learn from it and adapt from it. So I think there's a lot more negative stories in there, but there's still triumph on the other side of it. There's the lessons that we learn in what happens. But I think that if I hadn't have written Unzipped, I probably wouldn't have been as vulnerable in Blindsided. It kind of opened the door to let it out. And at the end of the day, if nobody buys the book, I found healing through it. So by getting it out and putting my stuff out there, I did it more for myself. And if somebody resonates from it, then I love that.
Yeah, that's great. Is there anything you're still working on that people might not expect?
I'm always a work in progress. I haven't told my story in the last year, but I moved halfway across the country I went from Los Angeles to a small town in Oklahoma with no friends and no family and no nothing or whatever. And so it's been in that journey in the last year that I found myself, but we still grapple with self-love. We still struggle with, mild, whether it's situational depression or seasonal depression or just life changes, and just how we deal with life changes. Like, I'm still human, just like everyone else. So I'm still in the to be continued myself.
Yeah. I think we all are. I mean, whether we admit it or not, we all are, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's one of those things. I think that sometimes it surprises people. It's like, oh, what do you mean you still have anxiety? You've talked about it for years and
Right.
years and years, and it's like, I don't know. I still have bad days. It's,
Yeah.
they're still there. They
I
didn't
think,
just go away.
and I'm sure with you, because you have a podcast, you put together, not that you're putting out a certain image, but there's a certain image of you, and what you choose to share.
Yeah.
And people who follow you and they resonate with you, if you are used to just kind of being the positive person or being on this, there's this version of you
Hmm.
that people, they're like, wait, you struggle? What?
Yeah.
You go to the grocery store? Like, what? You have bad days? It's almost like they can't comprehend it. And it's a blessing and a curse.
Hmm.
I think that sometimes it creates unrealistic expectations of us where people just think you always have your shit together or
Yeah.
you don't hurt or you can handle more than most because of how you're being portrayed. Um, and it can make things worse for you.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that's for me.
Yeah. No, it definitely can for me. And less, honestly, less on the mental health side of things. Like, I feel like I'm consistently super honest about I have bad days a lot. Like, it happens. And I'm really honest about it. And I post about it. And, like, I think everyone knows that. I think where people get not a misunderstanding, but maybe just a slightly false view of me is with parenting. Because I'm not going to talk about the super shitty. I mean, I do talk about some of the shitty things that happen,
Right.
but like, I'm not gonna talk about every little thing that I do wrong. I do lots and
Right.
lots and lots and lots wrong. Like what I was talking about earlier with my youngest, that's one thing that I did right. Probably took 10 things that I did wrong to get to that one thing that I did
Right.
right. So, but it's one of those things that it's just like with social media. You get what is put out there, and
Right.
that's it. You never get anyone's whole story, even if you're living with them. I don't get my
100.
kids' whole story. They don't get my whole story. It just everybody is their own person. Everybody's got their own life, uh,
Facts.
even in one household, which is hard to wrap your head around sometimes.
It's crazy because like, they say like when you die and like somebody comes to your funeral and you hear all these different stories, you're like, oh my God, I didn't know that about this person. Oh my God, I didn't know that. It's like you're like you just said, you're never gonna know 100% of
Yeah,
any person or whatever. So how can you make any kind of a judgment on anyone? You're judging
yeah,
on basically on a percentage of a perception.
yep, yep. So, Bite Mark would like to know, what is your favorite poem?
So I don't necessarily have a favorite poem. But talk about like art imitating life. I realized a few months ago that my favorite book growing up was The Giving Tree. I think it's Shel
Oh,
Silverstein, maybe,
yes,
or
I
is it?
love that book.
But I also realized that this tree gave away its apples, gave away
Everything.
its leaves, gave away its branches, and was nothing but a stump, but still was still pouring into that boy. And that's one of the reasons I had to take a step back from social media at one point because I realized I became the stump in this book. Like I just started giving myself to so many people. And the reason now it's my favorite book is it is now in reflection and realizing I became this book is I learned how to have boundaries. Like, what is that?
Yeah. That's a great book, and if anyone hasn't read it, I'm sure most people have, but
Mhm.
it's one that really fucked me up, like, as a kid
Mhm.
reading it even. It was like I would look around and like other people are reading the same book and they're not having this reaction, and I'm like,
No, like I was
why
like
am I
this.
reacting to this?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's exactly what you're saying. Like, it's just you're given everything. You're given everything. Everything you got, you're given.
People pleasers.
Yeah. Yep. 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 Yep.
Mm.
What is your favorite life hack?
It's gonna sound really weird, but it has probably been like God, it's probably been like 8 or 10 years now, but I start my morning every day with my 5 rounds of Candy Crush on my phone.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, and I do, there's like a couple games that I play every single morning, and then like and before I go to bed. And one of them's Candy Crush, and one of them's like the New York Times puzzle of the day. We have to guess the 5-letter word.
Yep.
And I'm playing some weird farming game right now where I have like, chickens, and I'm not a farming person or whatever. But it's like little things like that that are so removed from reality. And I had a grandmother who passed from dementia, and so there's something about keeping my brain active and starting every morning with an act, like kind of like exercising my brain and going to bed and exercising it before. So yeah, I was probably say Candy Crush is probably the longest standing.
I like that. There's so many memes about Candy Crush and the number of levels that there are in Candy Crush, and it's like suburban moms Candy Crush going, okay, here's the last level, and suburban moms going, we'll tell you when we're done.
Yeah, I don't like telling people because I think I'm like level like 8 or 9,000 something or whatever.
Yeah, it just keeps going. It just keeps going.
It never ends. Yeah, it never ends.
Yeah. I did open Candy Crush fairly recently. I used to be really into it. And then something happened and it wouldn't work on my phone, and so I stopped for a while. I opened it up not too long ago, and I was amazed that it's still just as fun.
I love this. I was like, it's just like I don't just by 5 levels, and then once I'm done, then I go about my day.
Yeah. But I do the Wordle, the New York Times Wordle. I do that one every day, or I try to do it every day. And then connections and strands, because those are the 3 free ones in the app. So I do those 3. Connections is like you get this grid of, I guess it's 16 words, and you have to pick which ones go together. So like here, I'll pull up whatever the one today was. So you get this grid of words, and you have to say, all right, well, and there's different levels. There's 4 different levels of difficulty, and you just group the words together. And so the first category was goad with on, so egg, on, push, on, spur, on, urge, on. But the words you had to group were egg, push, spur, and urge out of these other ones. And it's like you get these 4 levels. Purple's the hardest, and it's really, some days I'm like, I don't think those go together. I think you're lying to me. But some days it's really good, and it's another of those. My grandmother also has dementia, and I like to keep my mind sharp, and so puzzles like that are something that really it makes me feel like I'm doing what I can for now.
I'm telling you, I'm sorry, I don't wish it on anybody.
Nope.
Nope. I will say, and kind of like tying it back to the beginning of the conversation, it reminds me of kind of like the brain of a serial killer. There's something when you're watching a loved one, anybody going through Alzheimer's or dementia, and like how quickly they change from being here to being present 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. And just watching that, I was terrified, I was heartbroken, and I was fascinated all at the same time, like watching that. But I don't wish that upon.
No.
But it's now, having lived through that firsthand. I took care of her for 4 or 5 years. There's something about like whatever I can do to keep my brain active, and get exercise every day.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And it's a different person. Like the things that my grandmother has said, she has never once in my entire life cussed at me, and she's cussed me out now. And it's like, just the way that she's convinced that her house, she grew up in Oklahoma, the way she's convinced that her house is just down the street. And I'm like, it's not. it's not.
I can literally do an entire episode on just the stories in dealing with somebody with dementia. The biggest advice I give, live in their world. You know? When I knew people, whether in my family or in other families, that are combative. Like, no, that's not how. No, you're going to confuse. Play along with them. They're obviously not here. They're not doing this on purpose. They have no control over it. So my grandma would come up to me and she'd be like, Sheri, she's like, this is my husband, Wally. And I would look at my grandpa, I'm like, nice to meet you. It is a pleasure. Like, how are you doing? And her parents were going to be coming over for dinner. Her parents were dead for 40 years. And I'm like, they're coming tonight. What are we having for dinner? And I noticed that, like, just exist in their world.
Yeah.
It sucks, but
yeah, it's weird. And it's weird also,
Mhm.
to just be like, because she'll confuse my dad with her husband sometimes, and it's like, oh no. And it's funny also because she can simultaneously recognize me and
Mhm.
be like, yes, you're my granddaughter, and also be like, no, I just got home from school. And it's
Right.
like, that doesn't,
Yeah.
but it's not, there's not you're not speaking to logic at that moment. But
No. Has she
yeah,
entered her klepto phase yet?
not that I'm aware of. She's had to move into a care home because she was trying to leave, and she lived alone, and she went into the hospital for a little bit. And yes, so not that I'm aware of, but it could happen for sure.
There's definitely, yeah, like my grandma, we got the phone call one time at 2 o'clock in the morning that she had wandered outside and nobody knew where she was.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
yeah,
It's hard.
I,
It's really
I
hard. It's
don't
really
envy
hard.
it.
I'm sorry that you went through that. I'm sorry for anyone who's going through that. I know how
Yeah,
difficult it is. It's really
I am
bad.
very, for you personally, like anybody who's dealing, my biggest advice, talk with people about it,
Mm-hmm.
write it out, because I held everything in because
Yeah.
I was the go person. I was the one doing everything. My body eventually shut down because
Mm.
I would not, and I had a nervous breakdown, lasted like 8, 9 months or whatever. It
Wow.
was hard for me. That's a whole other episode. But that's why I'm much better now at being open when I'm feeling things and like just get it out of me, so I can work on a solution next. But definitely get it out of you
Yeah.
when you can.
Yeah. Oh, Tyrion's being so sweet. I love it. He can always tell when I'm getting a little bit upset, and he's just like, "What you need?"
I got you.
I know. So it is time for the magic moment, and Tyrion wants to sniff the magic wand, which is fine. If you could
Ooh.
wave a magic wand and eliminate one common opinion or misconception surrounding illness, disabilities, or talking about mental health, what would it be?
I would take a magic wand and say that mental health is not a negative thing.
Mm-hmm.
It is working on the health of your mental state. And sometimes it feels negative, but it could be positive.
Yeah, that's a great one. Well, I am going to post your socials one more time for folks to go through and connect with you. While I'm doing that, I'm just going to hand the mic over to you to talk about anything we didn't get to talk about as far as resources or anything, really. So I'll just give you the floor while I post these socials for everybody one more
Oh
time.
my gosh, no pressure. So you can find your Master Bad-Assery gear on MobaMentality.com. We currently have 50% off mystery bags on the website right now. So basically you pick your price point, you pick your size, and I do the rest. And I either pick out shirts or leggings or shirts or hoodies or hats or cups. We have tons of different products now. So the mystery bags have become really popular with people in the community because they kind of like not having any idea what's going to come, and it's like I get to pick for you, so it's like kind of like having a touch of Sheri. All of my orders come with a handwritten card because I will never forget where I came from, and I don't forget any order that I've ever gotten. I'm on TikTok at either Master of Bad-Assery or moba.sheri is my personal account. I'm usually on that one more. On my website, you'll have links to our Discord with the community support. If you're interested in community support, people on there do their own little challenges. They share recipes. There's a support group every Tuesday night that people host. So there's a lot of things for everyone. And then if you're ever struggling with something and you just want someone to talk to, or you want to talk about mindset, you are welcome to reach out to me. I'm also a mindset coach. And if anybody wants one-on-one help, I just got certified in personal training, nutrition, and I'm working on corrective form and movement certifications and weight loss specialist. So if you do need any additional help, reach out to me anytime.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sheri, for joining us today. Really, really appreciate the conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. Like, I had a great time tonight.
Good, good. I'm glad. That's what we're here for, is to have a good
Yes,
time
ma'am.
and get information out there. And I think we accomplished both today. But yeah, it was really a pleasure. Well, folks who are here with us still, give me just a minute to disconnect with Sheri, and I will be right back. Stick around.